Hello, my beautiful sisters. Welcome to Startup Herpreneurs, again, for that matter. And today we have beautiful Karen with us today. Say hi, Karen.
Hi, guys.
And Karen, she is a fearless flow mentoring coach and founder for that matter. She has done Course in Miracles for over 26 plus years. She's a spiritual mentor and she is amazing. I love her energy. You're going to see in a few minutes. We were just talking and she's just so kind and flowy and like, it's amazing. And today we're really going to get to talk about what is fearless flow and getting into building your spiritual team. And it's different than what you expect. So just you wait. And really, I'm excited to have another woo-woo girl on board, right? I call because we have, I always end up attracting people like you. And it's so amazing to be able to have spiritual conversations and go back and forth. So before I really get into it, Karen, I really want to talk about what is your story and how did you start your own business for that matter?
Yeah. So, I will say this. So I always say back when I was a kid, never once was I like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. Oh, I want to have a business. Like all I wanted to do, like I loved books. I loved reading. I loved storytelling and I loved animals. So if I could have been Dr. Dolittle, that would have been my favorite gig, like being able to help and talk to the animals. Like I've been vegan for like 16 plus years. So like Dr. Dolittle was never one on my list. I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. And I always knew that I wanted to write. Like I just knew I loved stories and words and stuff like that. So it wasn't until probably I have a long childhood story, but I'm going to make it really short just because I know we don't have a ton of time. But the basic story is I grew up in Lawrence, Mass, which is like 30 miles north of Boston in this tough little city, this tough little immigrant city. And my parents, my mom and my biological father got divorced when I was 2. And then my stepdad came on the scene. And my parents, my mother and my dad, who's my stepdad, they loved each other, but they were young. I always say they were wicked smart, but in some ways they were really dumb.
Mm-hmm.
So they were young babies basically trying to raise babies. And so it was a very volatile atmosphere, a lot of fighting, a lot of disruption. And my parents were like splitting up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the times when they were split up, when I was 12 years old, my dad was living somewhere else. My mother went out one night and did not come home. We woke up the next morning and she was missing. And we found out much later that day, my father basically came over to the house. We hadn't seen him in probably 6 weeks to 8 weeks, maybe a couple of months. And he came over to the house to basically tell us that our mother was dead. And my mother had been brutally murdered. And from that moment on, like my whole world just like shifted. And when my mother died, my mother was like, you know, I always say she was the love of my life. She was the light of my life. My mother was like the sun to my planetary system. And it's kind of like the lights went out, like when she left, and life became really hard. And when something like that violent happens, when something that exponentially like rocks your whole world happens, it made me just look at myself differently, men differently, violence differently, God differently, the world differently, like my whole inner compass. Like my mother was the compass I used to navigate the world. And once she was gone, I was just lost, like floating in space for a long time. And so gradually, but inevitably, is what I always say. And there's a lot of pieces in here. I went to college at Boston University. I lived in Boston and then I moved out to LA. And when I got out to LA, one of the things that was happening is my mother was coming to me a lot in my dreams. And she was saying to me, I've forgiven the man, the guy that killed her. She said, I've forgiven him and now it's your turn. And I was like, I didn't know how. Like I was raised by a bunch of tough blue collar Teamsters, like hardworking people. Forgiveness was not on the top of their list. They were all about like eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And when the guy that murdered my mother killed himself in prison, like they celebrated. And at that moment, I didn't feel that way. Like I was not happy that this guy was dead for a lot of different reasons. One being which I thought he held answers that I needed for my own inner peace and peace of mind. And now because he killed himself, I wouldn't have access to them. So gradually but inevitably, I left Boston. I moved out to California where like the self-help movement was like booming. This is like 91. And I ended up finding and ultimately meeting Marianne Williamson, who's a best-selling author. A lot of people know who she is.
She's going
And
for
Marianne,
president in 2020.
yeah, she is. She's now running for president. So it's pretty cool to have like your spiritual mom like running for president. And I'm so proud of her. So she like took me under her wing, and I worked with her and I lived with her. And that's how I found A Course in Miracles, and been a student for like 26 plus years. I'm finally getting to the entrepreneur part. I'm going to answer it. So what happened is, when I went to BU, I was a communications major. I was an advertising person. So I never actually really used my degree, but inevitably I found yoga. And I was first discovered yoga when I was like 18 years old. And then it wasn't until later in life that I started to practice it and really live it and blah, blah, blah. So the whole foundation of yoga, the basis of yoga is called ahimsa, which is nonviolence. So it's not surprising when you have a mother who's been beaten to death that nonviolence would be very appealing to you. It's also one of the reasons why I'm vegan, right? Non-harm to animals and to the planet and blah, blah, blah. So inevitably I was just running around all over the place. Like making a living as a yoga teacher is like wicked hard. It's wicked hard. And so eventually I just said, well, I don't want to keep driving to 17 different friggin' places. I'm just going to open my own studio. And I had no idea how to do it. I never had a business. I didn't have anybody to help me. So literally one day I'm driving down Route 4 and there's a traffic circle. And this is where we talk about being in the flow in spiritual teams, okay? So I'm driving down Route 4 and I knew I wanted to find a place to rent, but I didn't really have any money. And all of a sudden when I hit the traffic circle, I would normally go all the way around it and go straight, or go halfway around it and go straight. But as I got to the traffic circle, I heard a voice in my head, right? So in A Course in Miracles, we always say, there's a part of your mind that is always connected to God or the divine, or what I will say, your intelligence, okay? And so part of my mind said to me, take a right. And I was like, what the fuck? Okay. So I take a right and I'm just driving down the road and I see this for rent sign. And so I pull into the parking lot and I go inside and it's after hours and I'm like, nobody's going to be here. Like it's a little business weird thing. There's like a hair salon in the back, a lawyer, and then some room for rent or whatever. So I see a light on in the window and I went in and I knocked and the guy's there and he's the lawyer and he owns the building. And he's like, so who are you? And we sit down and we chat. And I'm like, I need to rent a space, but I don't really have a lot of money, but I'm just really excited to help people. And we had a great conversation. And he loved me. He was so sweet. It was like spiritual team on the job. My help is helping me. And so he loved me and he rented me the space for like dirt cheap, like so cheap. Yeah. So that's how my business started. So I really just went off of first of all, having a servant's hat. I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to spread the concept of nonviolence and love and compassion and kindness. And one of the things that I started to understand was that, you know, there's this phrase right now, like hurt people, right? It's a very common thing. Hurt people, hurt people. So when we're doing forgiveness work, we just say, well, they're doing the best they could. Hurt people, hurt people. But one of the flip side of that is that happy people tend not to hurt people. Happy people tend to be the kind of people who take responsibility for their circumstances, the way that they think about the world. And I always say, like, if you change your mind, you change your life. So I wanted to help people not just work with the body through the postures and the asanas. I was like, there's a much bigger thing happening here in yoga. And what yoga really is the path back to true self, true knowing, God realization, self-realization. So I built a little yoga empire. I built a little business, and then I started to have t-shirts, and then I started to have I started to do retreats, and then I had a TV show for like 13 years. And so this and I just kept getting downloads. People call it downloads. I call it, my spiritual team on the job. So I just kept getting intuitive hits. Do this. Right. And I started my business on my one credit card. I never wrote a business plan. I never wrote a business mission. And I was in business for like 18 years. And I just now transitioned. I've been doing spiritual mentoring for the past 6 years officially. I was doing it for many years for free. And then I got smart, right? It's like, okay, there has to be an energy exchange there of money, time, service, the whole thing. If it gets out of balance, it ends up creating resentment. So I just took a leap of faith and I started this. It started off as a yoga business. And now basically all the things that I loved as a kid are coming back around. So I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, I'm a storyteller, I'm a spiritual mentor. And I help people to transform their old stories. Like I had a really old story, dead mother, really disruptive and violent life. And I transformed it. Like my strength came from that. The greatest gold was within that wound. And so now I love to help people transform their story into their glory. And so often it's people who other help is like you, like as an entrepreneur, you love to help. That's why you're having this incredible summit, right? Mm-hmm. So that's how it all started. And now, and it's still so much of my business is not strategy. It's so much divinely aligned about getting my instructions for the day. Where should I be? And that doesn't mean that I don't have like a plan, like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to post content. I create content, but it's very loose and it's very intuitive. I call it my business strategy, and it drives my business coach. Like he laughs, actually, he thinks it's funny, but I say, oh yeah, my business strategy is magic, manifestation, and miracles. Like that's how I do shit, you know? So sorry, long answer to a short question.
No, that's amazing. And it's beautiful to know. I didn't lose my mother, but I did lose the first love of my life in a car crash. And that destroyed my world. So I definitely, you said that, and I obviously yours.
No, there's no comparing suffering. Suffering is suffering. Like you lose somebody you love, it knocks the wind out of you, right? It's like getting a punch to the gut. And if you don't have tools in place, right? If you don't have tools in place for your own healing, it takes exponentially like longer amount of time. So what a good business coach does, what a good spiritual mentor does, is we save you time because we've taken the journey first. And now we're sending I always say, if you're lucky enough, whether it's financially, emotionally, spiritually, to expand, grow, heal, right? So whatever gifts you've been given, so that I say you can take the elevator to the top floor, you better send that sucker back down. You better send it back down. And I think that's what is really great about mentors. That's what we do. And it's really great what some of these summits are about. It's because people are giving basically free information. It's like they're saying, here's the path I took. Take notes, pay attention. We're trying to help you speed up the process so you don't get stuck. So don't you find that a lot of female entrepreneurs end up like not getting traction, or they get in their own way, or they, as I was saying, they pump the brakes too much or whatever? Right. And so the beautiful thing about this is we get to say, like, this is what we did. Maybe something that I'm sharing from my hat will land in your hat and you'll find it helpful, you know?
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And when you said your story to your glory, I was like, definitely. People talk to me about my story and they're like, wait, hold on. You had a father that was a cocaine addict. You had a sister that kept running away and beat up your mom. I was like, yes, this is my story. But to me, it's on the past and it's like a different me at this point. And now I can see that version of me and where I was once upon a time and use that to really help other people move forward and build their dreams and their reality and really move forward. So I connected with you fully when you were telling me your story. And this is why I love asking people their stories, because it's definitely a connection like none other when you hear what someone else has gone through and how they overcame it. And I think that's part.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I finished.
No, yeah, that's the key there is we're obsessed in this culture with like drama and trauma and like retelling the story. And so many entrepreneurs too are getting it a little bit wrong when, you know, it's really, story is so powerful in your brand. Mm-hmm. But it's how you use your story. And not everybody knows how to use their story in actually an effective way. Because if they're telling it still from the wound or the victim place, it's not impactful. And what you just said, it's like, and then moving on, or what I learned from it. And I always say, like Joseph Campbell often says, you know, the great philosopher and writer Joseph Campbell says, you know, the treasure lives in the dark cave where you don't want to go. So it's like go into the dark cave, but then turn on the light. Like illuminate it. What was this really about? What was the gift here? What was this for? What's the lesson or the blessing or the gift? And then take it and use it to help others. But first you have to heal yourself or you're no good. And I see a lot of female entrepreneurs, like I said, they love their story. They're attached to their story. They're not ready yet willing to release it so they can rewrite it, so they can actually go out and be impactful and be powerful. Your story should empower you. And I always say, like the movie Rocky, like it's one of my favorite movies of all time. But if he had just stayed a bum hitting meat in a locker, like that wouldn't have been it. But it's that run through the street. He's literally becoming the champ as he runs up the stairs, you know? And it's that mindset. And it's funny because you said, oh, I'd love to have another woo-woo person on, right? One of the things about me is I'm a very practical spiritual teacher. Blue collar, down to earth. How do we take these big woo-woo principles, but really apply them and practice them and live them? Because you can't theorize about this shit. It's just like if you're trying to build a funnel, right? If you're trying to, like, your lead magnet, how you're going to get people to follow you or buy your product or your course or whatever, right? It's like you have to be able to be coming from that place of knowing yourself, your authenticity, and not just kind of like so many people in their business, like they're just throwing shit against the wall and hoping it sticks.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So when I was saying about the Rocky thing, it's really powerful for us to, like I said, look at the story, mine it for gold, and then use it to show the rise, the triumph. People are going to relate to you in the dip down at the bottom where you're in the muck and the mire. They're like, oh, me too. Like you said, oh, I lost the love of my life too. And you and I could hang out there in connection in the loss, in the grief. But where I want you to come with me is the rise. That's the way out, the transcending of the drama and the trauma. And that's the forgiveness work. That's the spiritual work. But being able to apply it, it's all coming back to me now. I kind of had a brain fart there for a minute. My whole point about Rocky is the reason why I use him is Rocky is like so relatable. We are all the underdog. I would say in A Course in Miracles, if you're here in a body, you're already an underdog, because what happens to a body? It's born and it dies. That is guaranteed. We already know the end is going to come. And we often look at life like we're born, we die, and in between everything's wicked hard. And it's like, no, like while we're here, if you have a calling in your heart to start a business, to help others, to share your gifts, it is so important that you listen to that, you know? And so when we talked about, you know, the fearless flow, right? And your story to your glory. And I'm going to connect these things in a second, but Rabindranath Tagore has a beautiful quote, and he says, everything that belongs to you will come to you if you create the capacity to receive it. And I see a lot of people hustling, and I often say my holiness is more important to me than my hustle. And what I mean by that is getting in divine alignment with the truth of myself, because that's where my power really lies. That's more important than all the strategy and the funnels and the bullshit stuff. That stuff is helpful, but if you don't get in here right, your outer game is going to be a reflection of your inner game. Mm-hmm. So what the fearless flow is about, and living in fearless flow, is there's a beautiful line in A Course in Miracles that says, if you knew who walks beside you on this way you have chosen, fear would be impossible. Like if you knew who walked beside you on this way you have chosen. And then another quote I love, it says, you know, true fearlessness comes from the capacity of knowing that you have within you all the resources you need. Whatever shows up, you already have what you need to face it, to overcome it, right? And fearlessness doesn't come from just little me trying to do it on my own. And whether that's getting help through a coach, a mentor, but mostly getting your spiritual life right. And you don't have to believe, I always say to people, you don't have to believe in God, but you can believe in your highest self, your most kind, compassionate, loving, right, good self. If you don't believe in a higher power or God or love or whatever you call it, the universe, right? You can take it however you want, but we have help available to us, but we have to bring it down. We have to take it and start to like live it in our business. Otherwise it's not going to happen.
So how do we do that? How do we bring it into our business and really start living like it?
Yeah. So I always say the first thing first is DSP, daily spiritual practices. Because think about right now, the way the entrepreneurial world is being sold to us is it's very masculine. And I have a lot of masculine energy. So I don't really have a problem with the boys in that way. I don't mean it like that. Like everything's like hustle, grind, get it, get more, do more, be more. And it's just like some days it's like, Jesus Christ, can we just be ourselves? Can we just breathe and relax for a second, right? So I think it kind of gets like crammed down our throats to do. And I'm like, no, The key is to be, like to be in stillness. So when you start a daily spiritual practice, you start by slowing down. Sit your ass down and get quiet. And the Course in Miracles is a beautiful line that says the voice for God. Call it the voice for love if you don't like the word God. The voice for love, the voice for God comes to the quiet mind. And it says an undisciplined mind, an untrained mind can accomplish nothing. So if you don't take time to slow down, to breathe, to be with yourself, however you meditate, there's 1,000 ways to meditate, but I call it like going online. You got to plug into source. And one of my spiritual teachers, Ashwaran, says, you know, his granny, who was his spiritual teacher, called him the little lamp. And he said, we're all little lamps. And the divine is the electricity that runs through us. But in order to light up, we have to plug in first. And so daily spiritual practices allow us to plug in, and you get your power and your strength. So Ashwaran calls it meditation mojo. You get the mojo that you need for the rest of your life. And whether that's you're a parent, you're an entrepreneur, you have a sweetheart, you're an artist, a writer, a creative, I'm married to a professional musician. He has to listen deeply and receive, right? Like he'll sometimes wake up and there'll be like a song in his head. And it's like, where does that come from? You know, call it a divine download, call it intuition, call it gut instinct, call it the muse, right? I don't care what you call it. But there is a voice that is trying, the inner still voice of the inner teacher. Everybody has it. And I often say, like, God calls everybody, but not everybody picks up the phone. Because we're so busy with our business cards and our website and doing our Instagram stories. And it's like, dudes, inner game first, this work first. And it's from this that all this happens, you know? So again, daily spiritual practice, meditation, prayer, getting quiet, asking for help beyond humans. Humans come second. Because haven't you ever like been like, I should call so-and-so. And then you call them and they're like, oh my God, I was just thinking of you.
Yeah, good times.
Right? So whether it's universal signs or whatever, and I know it sounds woo-woo, but I am telling you it is a key component to your success that you know yourself and who you really are and to whom you truly belong. Because part of your business is done by your spiritual life. And people are like, so I gotta pray. You don't have to pray. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But there's something about you getting quiet so you can really hear the voice of your own heart. So you can really hear the part of your mind that is always connected to the smarty pants. I always say the divine is smarter than us. Because as humans, we have very limited view. And we actually can't see, which means we actually don't know all the solutions. We don't know all the strategy. And we actually don't know what's best for us. We think we do. And I always say, like, why would I want to run my business based on my limited POV, my limited point of view, when there is access to omnipotent divine intelligence, which has a dream for me that is greater than I could ever imagine? In A Course in Miracles, it says, you know, child of God, like, you don't ask for too much. You ask for too little. And it doesn't mean material shit. Like when The Secret's like, oh yeah, manifest the Lamborghini. It's not about the Lamborghini. It's about you starting to align with that part of your mind that is, that has your best interest at heart.
You know, for some reason, when you were talking about the little lamp and really getting into that and connecting with your higher self and so on and so forth, I was thinking of Christmas lights. And you know how when one turns off, all of them turn off. And how if you're not focusing on your spiritual path, or if everything is connected, and when one turns off, you're turned off. So you have to take care of each little part of you. You're like, yes,
it's all connected. But a lot of times people, especially because we're brought up in a society where the things we don't talk about, right? Food, sex, money, politics, religion. And there's another one somebody told me. I know there's 6 of them. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to remember what it is. But so we have this big thing of separation. right? The separation of church and state, the separation of your whole life is your spiritual life.
Yeah.
How you talk to yourself is your spiritual life. How you talk to each other is your spiritual life. And when we were growing up, like I was raised a Catholic kid, and it was so confusing to me how we'd be in church talking about love your brothers, love your brothers and sisters, and we're all one in Christ, and like all the hullabaloo. And then we'd go outside in the parking lot, people would be flipping each other off and being wicked mean to each other. And I'm like, didn't we just talk about loving each other in there? And so it's like we can't just preach it and think, you've got to live it. And there's a lot of coaches out there, a lot of entrepreneurs out there who talk a good game, but they're not walking it. They're not living it. And I'm just telling you, the most impactful thing, people are like, well, should I take a course on funnels? Should I sign up for a huge mastermind? Yes. Once you're ready though, like, it's like, I've seen so many people, they jump too soon into the strategy and their inner game is a mess. Yeah. And I'm like, you're not going to get results until you get your mind right. That is the first step. And you can do it. I'm not saying you have to wait until you've you're like up on the mountaintop and nothing ever bothers you again, right? That's not reality. But in conjunction with, because you'll get way more insights, because you'll start to understand. So for a long time, I did everything on my own. I was the visionary. I was the one who came up with the ideas. I was the CEO. I was the marketer and the accountant and the practitioner. I did it all. And then I was finally like, I have taken this as far as I could take this. And I had to make a choice. Like, if I want to expand and really step into the vision that I have for myself, which I know is piddly compared to what my spiritual team, my mom, the divine has in mind for me, but I'm at least doing what I can and what I know to do. It's like, all of a sudden I was like, okay, I need to like really step into this in a more powerful way. And I knew I needed help. So I called in this help more than ever. So we have to be willing to like take our hands off the wheels. Like when we were kids, I know pretty much everybody is going to be able to relate to this. It depends on how old you are. I'm like 50. But when we were kids, we loved yelling, shotgun. We loved to ride shotgun. But as we got a little older, we were like, I can't wait till I'm the one driving the car. There's something to be said about riding shotgun and getting information from a source that is smarter than you. So when you get help, divine help and then human help, and you have to be willing to make the investment. Like, I guarantee you, I assume that at some point, maybe, and if you're not, like, it's another thing with summits, is they might be able to buy the whole summit at the end. It's like, you've got to be willing to make an investment in your own growth. You know what I mean? And it's like, when I started mentoring and coaching, I was like, I can't ask people to invest $5,000, $10,000, whatever, to come work with me if I don't go first. So I've invested $30,000 above and like, I've invested so much money in my own growth spiritually, you know, with my business and everything, because you have to be willing to go first. And it's uncomfortable, but it's not uncomfortable for the reasons that they think. People have all these excuses around money and I can't afford it. It actually has nothing to do with the money. It's about believing that you're worth it. It's about self-love. It goes back to that inner game, because you won't make an investment in something if you don't think you're going to follow through, or that you deserve it, or that you have value. So you don't get your mind right, it will screw up your steps to become a successful entrepreneur in so many huge ways. And it's a perception problem, an identity problem about who we think we really are. And we start to believe that we are our business, but we are not our business. Our business is simply a way to express ourselves. So what I always say is, your identity, who you are, you can call it child of God or whatever, but let's just break it down even more simply. Who you are really is love. You are an extension of divine love. That's it. That's your identity. And your purpose as an extension of love is simply to extend that love yourself. And that's your purpose. So you are love, and your only job is to extend love. And how you do that is up to you. What makes you happy? What lights you up? What makes you joyful? What are your strengths? Where's your genius? I'm not going to go and work on Wall Street, because, I failed accounting, like in college, in high school. It was not interesting to me. Put me in a room with books and words all day long, but numbers, yeah. So you've got to know yourself. And how do you start to know yourself and your strengths and your gifts and when to ask for help? You sit your ass down and you get quiet and you call upon your spiritual team to help you. And it's so important. I cannot express it enough. So, it's always like, you gotta, don't get your hustle on until you start to kind of spend a little time with your holiness.
Yeah. You've mentioned spiritual team a lot, and I just want to get clear on what is a spiritual team, just in case anybody else is missing that. So can you explain that for us really quickly?
I can. And the good news is that my free gift at the end, it's actually going to be a download for people to build their own spiritual team. So I'll explain it a little bit here, but it's going to also be on that PDF that they can download for free for themselves.
Perfect.
So yeah, so I consider your spiritual team. And I'm gonna tell you the little caveat, the little twist at the end. But so I like to think of it like I consider your spiritual team, your angels, your guides, your helpers, anybody who has taught you, has expanded your heart, expanded your mind. So I'm a spiritual mutt. I pull from a lot of traditions. So like my spiritual team, of course, has my mother on it. Okay. Has Jesus on it. Jesus is one of my homeboys. Mother Mary, because mostly she's one of the most compassionate figures in mystical traditions. Like Mary is just like the queen of compassion, along with Kuan Yin. But also Sekhmet. Sekhmet is the lion-headed goddess from Egypt, and she's fierce. And I love me some Sekhmet. And I have a bunch of animals on my team. Mr. Rogers is on my spiritual team. Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Ishwaran, Marianne Williamson, right? I have a really diverse spiritual team. And so if I'm about to make a decision or make a choice, A Course in Miracles, we say, today I will no longer make decisions by myself. There's a reason why they say that to you. Because you're crazy. Most of us are mental, like we're crazy. And I don't mean necessarily in the certified, like mentally ill, like depressed, but we are a little nuts. We all get in our own way. We don't do the things that are actually best for us, right? So I would say we're all a little crazy. We're listening to the ego voice instead of the voice for love. That's the insane part of you. That's what I'm talking about, right? So my spiritual team is like very diverse. And so I will make no decisions by myself. I add, because it's no longer intelligent to do so. Because I know how I hold myself back. I know how I can trip myself up. I know that sometimes I will play small if I get afraid, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to call upon something greater than me. And this is the culmination of all your angels and guides, your animal totems, your spirit animals, whatever it is. My 4th grade teacher who saw me, like really saw me on my spiritual team. And it's not just mentors. Something powerful happens. I always say to people, mentors will take you, mentors are great. They're really going to help you on your path. But tormentors will take you a long way too.
But what? Say that again?
Tormentors.
Tormentors.
It's my accent. So I'll try mentors and tormentors.
Got it.
They'll take you a long way too. And so your spiritual team is there for you to guide you, to help you get out of your own way. But you only hear them if you can turn down the chatter and the noise of your own mind. And we do this, whether it's through breath work, pranayama, and yoga, whether you do it through doing the rosary, chanting, meditation. And it's about, first of all, developing any relationship or friendship. It's trust. You got to spend some time together. Think about how women become friends. We hang out. We talk to each other. We listen deeply. We create a sacred container. It's the same thing. And it's not about creating a connection. The connection has always been there, but we're not taught about it. And you know what I mean? We listen so much. We're always looking externally outside of ourselves for our value, our worth, for our goodness, for permission, for acceptance. And that's all bullshit. That's external stuff. It's about going within, remembering your true self. So it's fun to kind of personalize the helpers, right? I have a big dude. He's a Native American guy. I just call him grandfather. I just know. I don't know how I know. When I've had readings in the past, they're like, you have a really big dude standing behind you. I'm like, oh yeah, that's grandfather. He's cool. High five, And I know it sounds cuckoo, but I don't care because I know it works. because I'm not this woo-woo chick. I'm a very practical, down-to-earth person, and I've seen the miracles happen in my life. When I shifted my mind into what is possible, the love doors just like flew open. And so you'll get into it more, but here's what they really are. Again, Course in Miracles says there is a part of your mind that is always connected to God. There is a part of your mind that is always connected to the most smarty pants part of yourself. And that's what they represent. So I say a prayer every day from A Course in Miracles. It's a little bit modified from A Course in Miracles. And it says this: please have me go where you would have me go. Have me do what you would have me do. Have me say what you would have me say, and to whom. Please use me. So the greatest thing I ask for every day is to be used by the divine, to show up so that because if you don't get your mind right first thing in the morning, your whole day is going to be different. The content you create, the way you talk to your kids, the brand, like you will not be online. You'll go to do a Facebook Live and you'll be like, ooh, that just felt weird. It's like, yeah, because you're not being authentically, truly you, because you're out of fucking alignment. And it's like, you got to sit down and do the work. That's the hardest thing. Anybody can teach you how to do a funnel. Anybody can teach you marketing and branding strategy. Pick your colors, do your website. But nobody, you have to do this part. And you do that, everything, as you said with the Christmas lights, gets exponentially easier. And it will be easier, and it will be more joyful, and it will be more fun, because it's truly an extension of you. And so my job, whether I'm wearing the hat of spiritual mentor, or I'm wearing the hat of writer, or I'm wearing the hat or whatever, all I'm doing is extending love. And I say, if your job is you're a street sweeper or a janitor, you better be the best friggin' janitor there is. You better like mop up that floor with as much love as you can. That's it. If you're presenting an online course or a program, you better infuse that thing with as much love as you can. And that doesn't mean you give it away for free. Money, don't get weird around money, women. Don't get weird around money. It's just an energy exchange, right? It's just the flow. It's a flow. Money likes to flow. So it comes to me and I can give it back. And then it comes to you. And it's like, I always say, I think of my business. My business coach said to me, he said, KK, I think of your business like a money laundering business. Like money comes out from the world, it comes into you and it gets cleaned up. And then I know you're going to do good stuff with it. People always think spiritual people, you shouldn't charge for your services. Are you kidding me? Where does it say that God wants me to be poor? I got to keep a roof over my head so I can do my work. I got to have food on my table so I can do my work, right? I like to have a big fat bank account, right? I'm not rich, but I'm moving in that direction because I'm inviting more and more abundance into my life every single day. Because here's the deal, ladies. The more we have, the more good we can do with it. So I want people who are doing good in the world and also doing well. The more money I have, the more freedom I have to give to the organizations and the causes, to get behind the programs and the stuff where I want to see changes in the world. And the reason why I do my work in the world is I really believe, I always say this, I really believe that if the guy that killed my mother had known how to pause and get in touch with the part of him that he knew himself to be, there's no way he could have done what he did. I believe that happy people tend not to hurt people. And I believe that happy people are very conscious that everything is a choice. And we're deciding in every moment how we're going to show up. With the ego as our teacher, which is crazy town, or with Holy Spirit or your spiritual team, or the divine as your teacher, which is really love and showing up from a place of love. And that's all you're doing through your business, you guys, is you're loving people. That's it.
Wow. Can I tell you how like mind blown I am right now?
No. I thought you were going to say, can I just tell you how long you just talked right now?
No, oh my God, of course not. No joke. This is the least amount of questions that I've asked in any of these interviews, but it's the one where I've been like this the entire time. Like,
I have the gift for gab, but you can tell, right? I get really excited about this because I wish somebody had told me this stuff back when I was in my 20s. Like, I'm 50 now. So this is me sending the elevator back down and saying, you guys, and this is the work I do with my clients. This is spiritual mentoring right here. Is, you know, I do way more listening when I'm with clients. Right now, I'm just trying to give as much value as I can in the time that we have. So I know it's like run on of the mouth, but I just get so excited about helping people go back to the truth of themselves and knowing how they are. Because when the most radical thing that we can do is get our shit together. Because if we all take individual responsibility for how we're showing up and what we're putting into the world, you guys, we would have a different world. We would literally have a different world. So I get really excited about letting other people know that, you know, in A Course in Miracles, it says, child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Do not forget this. And so I don't forget it. Every day I say, what am I here to do? And I ask for help, and I say, send me where you would have me go, and have me say, not what my ego would have me say, because that would be a totally different conversation. So I allow myself, this vessel, this channel, this conduit, to be as clear as possible so that I can be in service to myself, the world, my brothers and sisters, because man, we need help. And I always say, the world needs help. God sent you. Let's get to work. We all have our assignment. A Course in Miracles says we have an individual curriculum. So I'm not going to be called to do the exact same thing that you do, and I'm not supposed to, because you have your own genius. You had your own experiences with the love that died, and your dad with his cocaine, and your sister who ran away, and your whole story is influencing the light you're bringing to the world now. Mm-hmm. And it was the transformation of that story into your glory that's allowing you to do this right now. And it's beautiful to bear witness to. So thank you for letting me be a part of it. It's so great. Yeah, it's so fun.
I have one more question before I let you go.
Yes.
And that is, what is one action step that people listening and are probably as awe-inspired as I have been throughout this scenario? Oh. Thank you so much for that. What is one action step that they can take to really move them forward, have this fearless flow, and really get to talk to their spiritual team?
Yeah, I would say by first of all, have a willingness to change the way that you perceive yourself. Mm. So we say in A Course in Miracles that the world is simply an outward reflection of an inward condition. So the most powerful thing you can do is to start to just be willing to change your mind and to see yourself differently, to see the world differently. And that begins by sitting down. So I'd say the most powerful thing you can do, your action step, is to commit to a daily spiritual practice. And don't get overwhelmed or scared by it, right? But I would say find a quiet, clean, warm place. It doesn't have to be a whole room. I am literally sitting in a closet right now, okay? So I took all the clothes out of this closet a long time ago. It's my little podcast space. It's my little quiet place, right? And mostly because I have 4 dogs and they bark. So I'm trying to but so I'm a little weirdo in the closet. But find a place that's warm, quiet, and clean where you can sit down every day. Try to sit down at the same time. Try to do it first thing in the morning, because the way you start your day will totally change things. And don't feel like you have to start with an hour or half an hour. Just literally, you guys, start with 5 minutes. And then each week, add a little more time. And you never have to do more than 30 minutes. But just start to get quiet. Start to let them know that you are open to having a conversation. And we often say, like, prayer is talking and meditation is listening. That's when we receive. So, but we're not asking for more clients. We're not asking for the gig. We're not asking for the car or the house or the love of our life. We are simply asking, please use me. Please use me. How can I best serve the light and the love? And A Course in Miracles says, I'll end on this. So I would say my answer is sit your ass down, start doing a daily spiritual practice, download the free guide to the spiritual team. Right? And it's going to prompt you. It will send you a couple of emails and it'll be like, yeah, let me know who's on your spiritual team. Right? I get excited to hear, because people have very eclectic spiritual teams and it's really fun, actually. Right? And then sit down and just be willing. Be willing. That's it. Because we're like this. We walk around like this. There's so much fear when we first are trying to start a business and we're like, but it's this. This is how miracles happen, in this state.
That's interesting. One of my mentors, the day one of here, she says, drop the rope. Right. And that's her entire book. It's literally about everyone's always doing this and just freaking
Yes,
drop it already. You know?
exactly. So it like dukes up, like we're all like, but here's the thing. Don't use your business either to attack, defend, or prove anything. Simply show up in service. That's it, you guys. Just remember, I am love. My only job is to extend that love. And how can I do that uniquely and authentically? Through my offering, through my business, through my entrepreneurship. You've been called to start a business because you feel called to serve. And just get really clear about what's yours. And don't worry about what everybody else is doing. The more you do this, the more you will find that you can be successful by just being you, like truly you.
Wow.
I am like a bloopers, blue collar, down to earth, not super fancy. That's not my brand at all, because I don't want to be putting on airs to try and impress a bunch of people who actually don't give a shit about me. You know what I mean? It's like the way I show up here is how I show up everywhere. And that creates like a no like trust factor, because people know, oh, you're going to get what you see. It's not like all of a sudden I become more fancy on stage. I wear my Chucks and jeans on stage just like I would sitting here in the little weirdo closet. So be yourself, be the little lamp, shine your light. Course in Miracles says you are the light of the world. And you are. So just go out and shine. But you got to plug in first. That's the work. That's the daily spiritual practice.
The main thing with the Christmas lights is nothing can be turned on unless you plug in the Christmas lights. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
This is amazing. No joke. And I really am excited to share this with everybody. And I'm glad people that are watching this at this moment is, I can't even talk.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. Honestly, I always say I never, ever, ever take it for granted when somebody invites me into their space and trusts me with their tribe and their people. And they, you know, they trust me enough to say, I think we're in safe hands here. So that warm invitation and the welcome and the opportunity for me to share what I love and to tell my mom's story and my story and to, you know, be helpful. Like, it's such a gift. So thank you so much. And it's been a blast.
And thank you, ladies, for watching. Until next time.
Till next time. Bye.
Bye.